Although he called every couple days, he'd seen Reef only twice since bringing him here, and that had been during the first week. "You've put on a little weight, and that's quite the tan you got going there." Reef was embarrassed by the attention, but pleased by the comments. He, too, had noticed the changes in his body. He'd always been wiry and strong without an ounce of fat on him, but the combination of Colville's rigid meal requirements, the guys assigned to do the grocery shopping on any given week knew Canada's food guide by heart, and the lifting and lugging Reef had been doing on the greenhouse had bulked up his arms and chest. As a result, he had to buy some new t-shirts, and the black one he wore now accentuated the extra muscle he carried. "I'm going to go see Frank for a bit and give you guys a chance to visit," Matheson said. "He's out back on the deck," Reef told him. Matheson nodded and disappeared around the side of the house. "So, what have you guys been up to?" Reef asked, leading his friends up the steps to the chairs on the veranda. "Up to or into," Bigger chuckled, settling himself on a wicker love seat that seemed just wide enough but far too flimsy for him. It creaked ominously. "We missed you, man," said Jink. "Things ain't been the same without you." "Where have you been?" Scar asked. "I called, lots of times. Didn't you get my messages?" Reef nodded. "Yeah, I got 'em. Thanks. I just been real busy." "Doing what?" Bigger asked. Reef was grateful for the question, glad for there not to be a silence after his answer. "Working on a greenhouse out back, replacing broken glass panels and wood that's rotted. Turned out to be a bigger job than I thought." "Part of your sentence?" Bigger asked. Scar kicked his foot. "What?" Bigger demanded. "What'd I say? You ain't here on vacation, you know." "No," Reef said. "Just something the guy who runs this place wants me to do." "Free labor, right?" Jink muttered scornfully. Reef nodded, simply because that was the easiest explanation. Lately, though, he'd been wondering how accurate that explanation was. Sure, he was saving Colville a pile of money by fixing the greenhouse, and there were still times when he'd be pulling out another splinter or bandaging another cut that he'd curse Colville long and loud in his head, the words piling up like cars bottlenecking a merge lane. But then there were other times when he finally figured out how to do something he'd been puzzling over, determined not to ask Colville for his goddamn help, and times when he did something just right, like when a bracket fit perfectly or a panel slipped exactly into place, and he'd step back and admire for a moment what he was doing. It was times like those that the reason behind why he was doing it just didn't seem to matter as much, but he doubted that would make sense to his friends, especially when it didn't even really make sense to him. "What about the other thing," Bigger stumbled. "Started that today, volunteering at the Halifax rehab." "What's that?" Jink asked. Reef ran a hand through his dark hair. The muscles in his upper arm and shoulder bunched and relaxed, and he noticed Scar staring at him, checking him out. He felt a rush of heat and wondered again why he hadn't returned her calls. He suddenly wished she had come alone. "What's that?" Jink repeated. "The rab?" "Rehab, kind of like a hospital," he began, "except people stay a long time, months." "Christ, months in a hospital, man," Bigger murmured. "Fucking depressing." "What do you do there?" Scar asked. Reef looked at her again. It was a warm evening, and he noticed a sheen of perspiration at the base of her neck that extended down between her breasts. The white halter top she wore contrasted dramatically with her deep tan, and her long red hair lay in soft waves on her bare shoulders. He had difficulty concentrating on her question, putting words together to answer it. "I only been there once," he said. "Do you wash floors and stuff?" Bigger asked, "like a janitor?" Reef shook his head. "I help out the nurses. Today I spent time with some patients." "Like who?" asked Jink. "Most of the morning I was with a woman, and the afternoon I was with a man, visiting, keeping him company." "A woman?" Reef and the others could hear the irritation in Scar's voice, and the three guys grinned at each other. "She's engaged," Reef said. Brett had told him all about the big proposal on the ride back up to the 6th floor. Cafeteria, bended knee, ring. Sounded ridiculous, but he didn't tell her that. "Why is she there?" Bigger asked. Reef told them about the skydiving accident, and all three were suitably impressed. "Wonder if she bounced," growled Jink, and Bigger guffawed. Longer and louder, Reef thought, than the joke warranted. Then he told them about the man he'd spent the afternoon with. Guy named Steven, in his early 20s, got banged up pretty bad riding a four-wheeler, hit by a car when he was crossing a highway. Jink whistled. "That's gotta hurt."